Welcome to Midpoint, OCC's midweek podcast aimed at helping you connect with last week's message and prepare you for next week's sermon. Let's dive in.
Well, hello and welcome to Midpoint, your midweek connection to Orchards Community Church. My name is Lacey, and with me in the studio today is...
Ready, Freddy Spaghetti.
is James Green.
James Green. Woo.
I guess I did a good enough job last time that you guys let me back in again.
Yeah, well, our bar is pretty low, but no.
Well, I guess
Are you going to
so.
be here? Yes, you can get. No.
Yeah.
You did a wonderful job,
Oh, well, thank you.
And obviously, folks on staff that we kind of have a schedule, and you guys out in podcast
I'm the fill in the
listenership
blank
land.
person.
Yeah, the way it works out, Lacey's not on the regular schedule, but if anybody can't make it, she's the number one fill-in.
I'm up there.
Yes, but you did a great job your first time, and
well,
I'm
thank you.
excited about today.
Well, thank you. Well, first off, congratulations on your 29th anniversary. That is super cool.
That's
a long time.
Yeah, that's more amazing when you think about the patience my wife has shown in 29 years to continue.
Can't believe she's still. No,
put
I'm
up with
just
me.
kidding. That's y'all
29
have been
years is a
longer
long
than I've been
time.
born.
Yeah. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
part, like, because, and this is the thing, and you're not supposed to compare anyway, and I know we do, I know I struggle, but like there are people in the body, of course, I'll stand up and say I've been married 29 years, and I talked to somebody this past week at the church who's been married 65 years.
Wow.
And you're like, 29 is
That's
nothing.
weak. That's weak.
Just weak sauce. And they're here. I mean, like they're showing up at church, 65 years married. And I was like, okay, you win, So
Yeah, I guess
29
so.
to me feels impressive, partly because of, and I made the comments, and I wasn't punching down at my parents, to use that illustration, but like my dad made a joke many times. He was trying to get to 25 years combined of marriage out of all of his marriages. And again, my mom passed when I was younger still. So the idea of 29 years, again, like you say, my oldest kids are older than you, but my marriage certainly is older than you, and that's a long time.
It is. In my mind, 29's a lot.
Yeah, for you, 29. People live that long? What do you
Really? No, when I was telling my mom about some of these famous people that had died,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, no, they died at like 71 and 76, and she was like, wow, that's old, and I was like, no.
I'm
That
afraid
means
it's
you've
not.
got like 20 years left, Mom. Don't think like that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's good to start thinking in that way. And of
No.
course, there are several famous people, Ozzy Osbourne and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Yesterday, a baseball player named Ryan Sandberg passed away with cancer. He's 65 years old. And 65 feels
That's
really
young.
Yeah, and especially when I'm staring up at 60 going, so it's
Yeah.
God knows the number of our days, but
Or then like you compare it to the people like Abraham who, was technically like in my idea prime at 100. So it's like, I mean, he's having kids at that time. It's got to be
all
prime,
the stuff
right?
we're looking for, like, yeah, you're fathering babies, let's go.
So it's like
Yeah,
71 really
we could
is
spend a
not
little
that
time
old.
talking about how people lived in Bible times, but yeah, I
But-
see where.
Anyways, that's besides the point.
What I'm supposed to say is thank you for
You're-
congratulating me.
You're welcome.
On my anniversary,
So
our
let's,
anniversary.
yeah, there you hour.
Yeah, not you and me.
Yeah, no.
that-
But you and Christina.
that'd get really awkward. Me
it's
and
not
my
just
wife,
yours. Yes, 100%. So let's do a quick recap of last week.
Yep.
We talked about faith being applied and believing in God for
Yeah.
miracles.
Yeah. That's a good takeaway, honestly.
Good. That was the title. So.
Yeah. Thought you came up with that one on your own.
Nope. That was your title.
Well, there you go. I just patted myself on the back.
Yeah. You mentioned the illustration of Abraham's faith.
Yeah.
What was the illustration? Like, what was his faith?
Well, and I talked about that last week, just kind of looking at the nature of his faith, that he very clearly had God as the object of his faith. That's who he was going to place his faith in.
Right.
But then, like, this is the part where when you start talking about application, it becomes really important. Faith becomes faith when it's active faith. And Abraham did struggle, honestly, with opposition to his faith. He had doubts. And I don't know how many of them are spiritual warfare things. I don't know how many of them were things, But you think about the big stuff in his life. Hey, basically Abraham was called by God to go live as a nomad for the rest of his life. It's like, hey, Abraham, good luck. You're going to go live in a tent. You're never
Right.
But because you're going to have descendants as numerous as stars in this land and everything. But until he got those things, and he never truly saw the whole descendants thing, in that, like that's a weird promise from God that you have to then go engage in
Right.
to demonstrate your faith. So he obviously had opposition, but in that he was kind of eternally optimistic. And it was just like, well, if God's called me to do this, this must be the thing. We didn't make a big deal about it in either week in the sermon because it then becomes more of a at least R-rated or maybe worse. But like, with the promise of a son, Abraham was cool and like, okay, God can do that. But then when God didn't do it right away, Abraham tried to take matters into his own hands.
Right.
And that's the part that we get.
Yeah.
Adult themed,
Don't
which we could probably do on the podcast much more than but in that, like, again, Abraham struggled like all of us struggle in applying his faith sometimes. But the great illustration that Abraham becomes is he not only remained optimistic, he knew the outcome. He knew that he was declared righteous. Yeah. And so that's why I'm confident Paul uses Abraham as the illustration. Because it wasn't just hey, look at Noah. Well, Noah did some weird stuff too. They're
all down there.
There's not a whole lot of characters in the Bible who really only have good press. Joshua is one. I should have said look at Joshua. Because like you look at Joshua's story in the Bible, and there's not evidence that he struggled. He did because he's a person.
Right.
But like most, you start talking about Noah or David or any of these great Bible heroes, man, they had real obvious flaws.
Right.
Abraham had flaws. They might not have been as obvious as some of these other guys, but he struggled. He continued to persist and endure and persevere with God. And I love the idea he kind of leaned when God leaned and swayed when God swayed.
Yeah.
He learned how to do that. He didn't come out doing that. He learned how to do that. And ultimately, he accepted the fact that God declared him righteous. So I think that's why Paul used him as the illustration of faith. But again, that was kind of 2 weeks ago. The idea this last week was that's great for Abraham. What about you and me?
Right, right.
How are we going to learn to apply
What
our
about
faith?
us?
Yeah, because that's you got to get to that question.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, do you really own your own Christianity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You also mentioned, speaking of you also mentioned a lot of our faith being applied.
Yeah.
You said that our faith must be personal, that our faith must be like Abraham's. Yeah. Our faith must appropriate with Christ's righteousness as our own.
Yeah.
And our faith must believe that God sent his son to pay the wages for our sin.
Yeah.
Why did you why are we saying our and not my?
Well, and again, that's because that was Paul's illustration talking about Abraham. But I kind of tried to make the point in the sermon, like we can only talk about our faith if I have professed faith. Right. Otherwise, I'm not part of our. Like I'd be talking about your faith instead of ours. And so that's one of those things that's kind of just incumbent in talking that way to say, well, then to be part of that club, you have to have personally professed faith. And so that was kind of the first point in there. It's like, it's great if we have a faith like Abraham's, but to do that, we have to have faith. And and it does have to be our own faith.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like even what we talked about in staff meeting today, walking through this book that we're discussing as a staff team called Church as a Team Sport. And it's this idea of legitimately the church, each and every local church as part of the universal church, like we got to be on the same page. We got to be working as a team to get there. Well, we're not going to hire anybody on staff who's not who's not a Christ follower.
Really?
So that part falls.
But I got here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
And we're going to ask you to declare faith right now.
Okay.
But in that, it's that idea of like, well, the team is only, you've heard this phrase, the team is only as strong as its weakest link.
Yeah.
For somebody, and we talked about this today, again, in the staff meeting, like if we're not out professing our faith, if we've never shared our faith with anybody, if we're not out living our faith in front of people, how strong is the team?
Yeah.
And that led to that discussion about the fact that we have this disciple-making process that we talk about, and we so often forget to talk about the very first chair, where people who don't know Jesus, we call it the lost chair. Like that's where we got to start. And sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, so I'll throw everybody under the bus. In the church, we rush to, okay, here's the people who are coming to church who we believe know the Lord, and we want to help them become workers in the church, and we want to help them become disciple makers. And we don't focus as well on the people in that first chair who desperately need to just know Jesus.
Like Wesley always said, like jumping that gap.
Yes. Yeah. So like I said, that part is really, really important, understanding all the process of it. But yeah, it's got to at some point in time be the way we talk. Hey, this is our faith. Collectively, we are living this out together.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems important.
Yeah. No, I agree. You talked about Charles Blondin.
Yeah. Well, it's French, so I think it's pronounced that way.
Oh, I was gonna say that's not how it's
not
spelled.
how it's spelled.
I was like, and he's the guy who walked the tightrope stuff. Which
His story is amazing. Yeah.
I read an article because I was really curious.
I gotta research
and I was like,
this
I've
guy.
got to research this dude. And by the way, I would never, ever volunteer. Like you were like, would
Lacey, where's your faith?
anybody jump in? Like you were leaving Monday night and you were like, would you hop in the wheelbarrow? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like that's just, I'm scared of heights and that's pushing
I asked
it.
Lacey if I could push her in the wheelbarrow on flat ground, and she said no.
I said no. So yeah, I don't like heights. So fun fact there.
Well, but that's the idea. Legitimately, and if you think about it, you try and put yourself in those shoes. If you're one of the 25,000 people sitting there at Niagara Falls, and you just watched him walk the wheelbarrow across there, and he says, "Do you believe I could put it?" Like I think I'd get caught up in that crowd. Yeah, I bet you could. But then it becomes personal.
Yeah.
Then it becomes, I believe corporately 25,000 of us believe you could do it. Individually, will one of us get in the wheelbarrow? No. It should be challenging because that, doggone it, is convicting. It really is.
And it really was. I was like, shoot. Yeah, no, you're right. I would not.
I would not get
I
in
would
that
love
wheelbarrow.
to see somebody else doing that. Anyways, the question is, how do you like find these people like Charles, or how do you find these kind of people to relate to in your sermons and make these illustrations?
As sermon illustrations?
Yeah.
There's a website called sermonillustrations.com.
Gosh darn it. I really, really, really thought you spent time and energy.
Well,
looking
the
for
reality
these
is
people.
it's a mix of the two because seriously, like I'd read Blondin's story before. I think I might have used it in a Young Life illustration years ago. So I've known about his story for a long time. It's the first time I remember in 20 years of doing pastoral ministry that I've used that. The website is good. It really does.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good stuff. It doesn't have a lot of funny stories.
Got it. Okay.
So most of those I'm researching independently. But no, a lot of it is you just, this is going to sound weird, I guess. You just pay attention to what's going on in the world. We were sitting here talking and we just referenced, I don't remember if we were recording or not when we were talking about the age, but stories like Ozzy Osbourne passing away in Hulk.
Yeah.
Some of that is just pop culture news that you try and pay attention to because people do.
Yeah.
And you can use those things to bridge gaps and to illustrate.
Okay.
So that's kind of why you do those things. I don't remember where I read this. I know I stole this. I was in seminary, I think, when I heard it. But somebody talking about how you read the Bible. And legitimately their point was you need to stay connected to the world. You don't want to live, obviously, of the world. But we do have to live in the world because this is where God has put us. And this guy's point was, well, it's not that you just read the Bible. You also need to read the newspaper. And this is so long ago when I was in seminary that I know people don't physically read the newspaper anymore, but you read it on your phone. And he's like, but you need to read with the newspaper in one hand and your Bible in the other. Because the things you read in the newspaper, you have to run through the lens of the Bible. Like otherwise, the newspaper is going to do nothing but, and I've admitted to this recently, it just depresses you.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Over the state of where we are in the world.
It's sad.
But you read it and you think about the fact that, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials. This next week, we're going to look in the passage in Romans. You must have perseverance that continues to grow because it will help you develop. And that's what the world gives us opportunities to do.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it'd be hard to be optimistic.
Yeah.
As Abraham was, as we're supposed to be, because we serve a sovereign God. So, you pay attention to things like that. And then amazingly enough, and again, I'm not saying I'm Jesus on this, but Jesus told parables. Jesus told stories. Because story draws people in. Always.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Well, and again, you can't get better than Jesus on these examples. And he would do it. And of course, the thing Jesus did was the thing that I can't do, nobody else can do, not being Jesus. But he didn't, if there's a crowd of 20,000 people, he didn't say, okay, all you believers stand over here, and if you don't know who I am, stand over here, and I'll tell two different stories. He would gather the whole crowd and tell one story, and then say, he who has ears, let him hear. And so sometimes I'm sure the illustrations he used fell on deaf ears because they're like, I don't even know what he's talking about.
Right.
But he was able to still share the story in such a winsome way that it would draw people in. And just like you, and again, I'm not
go for it.
But you went and researched Charles Blondin.
Yeah, no, I did. I was like,
you wanted to know more. And I think people will do that.
Yeah.
I think they get drawn in by the story and they'll try to find out more. And then the whole trick is, and people give me, some grief on this. I tell stupid jokes. I tell corny jokes.
I love stupid jokes.
but like, and I'm going to say this because this is what I'm trying. Like 100%, I don't ever want to tell a joke just to get a laugh in a sermon.
Right.
I tell the joke to set up a point that is going to be something scriptural. It's going to be pointing to something and applying our faith. And otherwise, I don't know that there's value in the joke.
Yeah.
I like telling a good joke, but like unless there's value, there's really no place for it in a sermon. And I remember I went to a conference one time, and I was really excited about the conference, and there were a bunch of big name theological guys that I really looked up to. And one of the guys who I, again, really looked up to came out to speak, and he told a joke, and it was a super funny joke that had nothing to do with what he was going to talk about.
Yeah.
He just picked out like his best joke and told it, and then literally said, that didn't have anything to do with where we're going. And then he moved on, and I was like, well, that's kind of lame.
Yeah, like you could have at least tried to connect it a little
Like,
bit.
I really look up to you. Why didn't you tell a joke that would move us?
Yeah.
And so that's all we're trying to do with that. So,
Okay.
Yeah, but there are websites that help. There's always stuff that'll help you.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we got that. It's actually been something I've been curious about. I'm like, where does he get these? Because half of these people I've never heard of.
Well, and again, but it's something funny because again, I'd heard that Charles Blondin illustration before. But I researched it a little bit this week to remind myself, and that's where I got the Abraham Lincoln quote. That Abraham Lincoln quoted Charles Blondin, and I was like, that is amazing. But that shows the same thing we're talking about. Mm-hmm. He became such a character, such a famous figure, that the stinking president of the United States was quoting him. That's how you become a pop culture icon and a reference. And so people are paying attention. Yeah. At some point in time. So,
that makes sense.
I thought that was fun.
I agree. When you mentioned the illustration, you kind of just briefly mentioned it earlier, of leaning where God is leaning.
Yeah.
I feel like that gave me a new perspective. Like I never really thought of like my faith in that way of leaning where God is going, and it's something you learn and not something that just happens.
Well, and this is, and again, I'm not picking on you,
not
getting in the wheelbarrow, because
nobody
that I know would get in the wheelbarrow. But that's the deal. Blondin put his manager on his back, and I don't know that his manager even totally knew what he was getting into.
Right.
And in the middle of this deal, said to him, "Hey, this part you really got to do right, or we're going to die."
Yeah. That's sketchy.
Yes. That's pretty, pretty sketchy if you think about it. But the whole idea on that being, and then this is where I tried to point to Abraham in that, like there are things that God told Abraham, promised Abraham, said, look forward to this. And I just don't know how easy it would have been to lean where God was leaning.
Yeah.
And of course, I used the example of Isaac, and that's the biggest one to me. If you'd wanted a son forever, if you'd prayed for a son, if God had promised you not only a son, but descendants as numerous as the stars, and you finally get one son, and God says, kill him, I don't know that I could lean that way. You know?
Sometimes,
And this, we pointed to this a couple weeks ago when Abraham first kind of talked about his faith, and he said, I have faith in God who could raise the dead to life. And so, like, in my head, I'm always like, is that what allowed him to be able to do it? Did he go, well, okay, I've got this son, and I could go kill him, and God could raise him right back to life? Maybe. Maybe that's what allowed him to do it. I guess I would prefer to think he just totally trusted the Lord.
Yeah.
And thought, okay, I'm not going to have to do it. But again, he had to go out on the hike. He had to go to the place God told him to go. And as you read the story, he had to prepare him to sacrifice him. And in all that, I'm like, was he all in? Or was he like, any second now, God's going to stop this?
Yeah.
I really struggle with that.
I can't remember. Did Isaac know that's what was happening or no?
It seems like in Scripture that Isaac maybe wasn't all on board.
I was like, I don't think I would voluntarily.
Because the question he has is like, well, we got this and we got this, but we don't seem to have any sacrifice.
Little do you know.
And that's the part where you'd be like, oh, whoops, son, forgot to tell you. That's the hard part in that story. Yeah. So, those things I just don't
Not telling the whole truth or nothing but the truth.
But again, to me, and I mentioned it in the sermon, but I mean, this has greatly impacted me in my life. There are times I think where God sets us up for that, that challenge, that call to active faith, and it isn't even really about the thing that we do. It's about our heart attitude. Am I willing to do it?
Yeah.
I had a friend who gave a bunch of money to a church one time because they were doing like a capital campaign kind of thing. And he agreed to give so much money it was going to change his lifestyle. He's like going to have to sell his house, and he ended up making a ton of money that year in his business. And so he didn't have to sell his house. He didn't have to change his lifestyle, and God still allowed him to give it. And it was the Abraham Isaac lesson I think that he learned. He's like, I don't have to do the things that God calls me to do as long as I'm willing to do the things God calls me to do.
Yeah.
And he was willing. Like he'd already talked to his real estate agent about setting his house up and doing it, and he didn't have to do it. And God knows hearts, and I don't know at what point in time God jumped into that. But that's kind of the cool thing on that. Are we willing to join God? Well, some of it is just Abraham learned that. He didn't have that.
Yeah.
He learned it by holding on to God, just like Harry Calcourt hung on to Blondin. And was like, okay, if you lean this way, I'm leaning this way.
Yeah.
If you sway back this way, I'm swaying back that way. Well, that's a lesson we have to learn, and there's no way to learn it except for to get on God's back.
Do you think we have to be like how the manager was and be like he tells us like when we're already in it, like you kind of don't have a choice at this point. Like there's
and again,
no turning back.
That's a wonderful thing because this is 150 years ago. It's not even like biblical history, but like we don't know. Is that the first time Harry Calcourt heard it? Was when they were sitting there going, okay, this next part could kill us both. Yeah,
I feel like there's no way you could. Let's say I'm already willing.
That, before you stepped on the table.
I'm already willing, and then you tell me that before. Now I'm really not willing. But then I'm already halfway there. Now I have no choice.
Yeah, that's where that illustration might fall apart. But no, I mean that's the reality of it. That's a good question. That's a phenomenal question. I have talked to lovely people, well-meaning parents, who've raised kids who love the Lord with all their heart.
Yeah.
And they say, well, I feel God's calling me to go be a missionary in this horribly dangerous area. And those parents who love the Lord and who love their kid will say, no, you can't go. And that's always one where I'm like, what if God is calling your kid to that spot? And you're going to say, no, I'm not leaning that way, God, because that's too dangerous. Well, God knows exactly how long we're going to live. He knows every hair on our head. He knows every, Are we not trusting him to protect us? But like as a parent, I totally get it. Because you're like, but you gave that kid to me to raise on this planet, and I'm going to show some discernment. Don't go into that scary area.
Yeah.
Well, if God's got our back, he's got our back. But that's super easy for me to say sitting here in the podcast room with you.
Yeah.
But if my kid said, hey, I think I'd like to go, I'd be like, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I like your life here.
And again, if I didn't know about that until they were on the plane flying over there, that it was a dangerous area, maybe that's I don't know.
Yeah.
Lacey, that's a great question.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Made it on the fly.
Well, it really, really is good.
Well, good.
Because it forces you to think. And this is the deal. This is always the deal. Faith is great. It's easy to talk about. It's hard to live. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I can't just talk about my great faith and never step out on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that illustration, do you think I kind of made this illustration of myself, and if it's really good, I'd like to give myself a pat on the back. If it's not good, I actually didn't make it.
If it's not good, I got this question from Wesley.
I actually got it from Wesley, and Brenton put that in his head. Okay, can we think of God as the tightrope walker, as Charles, and we have to trust him to get us across wherever it is safely?
No, I think that's kind of the picture you're trying to present, that there are things God is going to do. I really struggled. I remember reading a book fairly early in my journey as a Christ follower. It was early. I probably wasn't on Young Life staff yet.
Oh, okay.
So I'd been a Christ follower.
This is eons ago.
Yes, as ancient as I am.
Ancient.
But I mean, this was almost 30 years ago, whatever. But I'd been a Christ follower 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I read a book that everybody in church was reading. I'm not going to throw the book under the bus. There are some people who really like this book. I really struggled with this book. And again, I know because it might have been a little further than that because I know I had a couple kids, but we had our first 2 kids pretty early and they were 13 months apart.
Right.
So again, I had not been a Christ follower for that long. And this guy wrote this book, and it was about masculinity and a call to step out in faith with things like this. And he presented a story where he had young kids, and he took them whitewater rafting. Okay. And he put them out on the river in this class 5, just crazy kind of stuff. Yeah. And one of the kids almost bounced out of the raft and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the stupidest guy I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And again, he could have made lots of different connections. But his idea was we need to join God in crazy things like that because God is a risk taker. That was the point he made out of that. And I was like, I'm not. At this point in time, I hadn't been in seminary. I don't think I was in vocational ministry. I was like, that's stupid. Like, God is not a risk taker. God knows everything that's going to happen all the time. And I think as parents, he gives us discernment to not put our kids in crazy situations like that.
Yeah.
And so if the tightrope walker illustration, like if I'm there and my kid's there and I say, I want to really see if this works, I'm not going to put my kid on Charles Blondin's back. So there is a part where until kids are old enough to make decisions of their own, that, like as parents, we have discernment. We have wisdom to raise the kids God gave us. So all that to be said, there is at some point in time, like, what if, and I've used this illustration before. Sometimes I think good leadership is to throw an idea out that's absolutely crazy and see if people will disagree with you.
Yeah.
Because you don't want just a bunch of yes men who are like, well, James said we should do this. Like, like if I say something crazy, I want you to go, have you thought that one through?
Yeah.
Because that really, sometimes I've done it just to see if people will push back on me. So this is the whole idea. Do we feel, say God's the tightrope walker, do we feel that he is presenting a situation that we are supposed to come to and say, are you sure this is in your will? Are you sure? And at some point in time, I really do believe if it is something we're supposed to join God in, we will have peace. We will have peace that Paul talks about this so much in the churches that he planted. You'll have peace that surpasses understanding. You'll have peace that defies comprehension. You'll have peace that rules in your heart. Well, when has that happened to us in our lives?
Yeah.
I got some money and I felt like I was supposed to give it to the church. And it didn't make any sense for me to give it to the church because I have this thing I need to take care of that. They were like, but I really feel peace about giving it to the church. Well, that's peace that surpasses understanding. I got in this situation and I really like this guy or I really like this girl and I'm looking at my future and I think it should be this way or whatever like that. But I don't have any peace about us pursuing the Lord together. Well, then that would be God speaking to you. I think he speaks to us through peace.
Okay.
I haven't heard God's audible voice. I'm not going to put it past him because he's God. He can do whatever he wants. But lots of times that's been the way of like, do I have peace in this or if I don't?
I like thinking it of that way because a lot of times when people are like, like God talked to me and I'm like, I never really felt like God, like in quotes, God talked to me because I'm like, I don't hear anything. But I like that illustration because I'm like, I can feel.
Well, and again, I think you get something, and I don't want to elevate feelings above, rationality and that.
Right.
But I mean, seriously, and I just think that's how the Holy Spirit, who is indwelling, kind of leads us, guides us and stuff like that. And I think God is better, much better, about orchestrating circumstances like that for us than we think. I remember this famously because there was a kid who came to me, and this was back in Missouri at the church where God had me on staff there. And this guy came to me, and he was a nice enough guy, and he said, he wasn't a great looking guy, I'll just put it that way. And there was a young girl in the church who was very empirically attractive, and he was like, God's telling me I'm supposed to marry that girl. And I was like, did God tell her? Because like marriage is a two-way street kind of thing. You can't just go, well, God told me, like, because if he really wanted it, I think he would tell her as well.
Yeah.
In things where we need agreement, God is plenty big enough to work that way.
Yeah.
And so that's the deal. I think this is where you get sometimes religious zealots and people are way off. Well, God told me this thing. Well, that thing only seems to benefit you. It doesn't seem to bring God any glory. It doesn't seem to bring the body together and help build up the, like, none of these other things align with something God would tell you.
Yeah.
So I don't have any peace about that.
Okay.
And that's kind of how you move forward. And again, that way you're holding God's word up as the standard for that anyway, which is, I think, what we're always supposed to do. But again, all your questions today have been really great because they ultimately come to, well, yeah, I do want to join God where he's at work.
Yeah.
I do want to step out in faith. That's going to be very, very hard at times.
Yes.
And there are going to be times where, like, if I feel God led me out here, now the only way to make it is to lean where he leans and cling to him in that and let him guide me, because on my own, I'll end up falling off the stinking road. So,
and I'm going to regret all my decisions.
I was like, I didn't do that one right. But again, that's just, to me, it's a great illustration because it's a practical illustration. And it's practical because we can talk about it, and praise the Lord, none of us are going to go stand.
None of us are going to
go stand on the tightrope.
I still won't.
I shouldn't say none. There may be some wild folks out there. We'll see.
I'm not one of them. Well, since there are no other questions.
Which means, folks, we need you to send in some questions.
And I think
Lacey did a great job. She filled in for all of you today, but send some questions.
I think they know when I'm coming and they want it to be short and sweet. They're like, maybe next week.
I don't know if that was it or not. But I will say we greatly appreciate it when you guys send in midpoint questions. They're so much fun. And I get questions. Some of you guys just come up and ask me questions after the sermon, which I love that too. I got some great ones Monday night, which were really, really good. But in that, like, take the time, send those in.
Send them in.
Share those
We'd like
with
to hear
everybody.
you. Everybody wants to know. But we hope you enjoyed this week's midpoint. If you would like to send in any questions or thoughts into the show,
we're making it easy on you.
We are. Please email or text OCCpodcast@lewistonocc.org. You can also use the Dropbox outside the auditorium, even on like a connection card.
Yep.
Which please do fill out. We love hearing from you overall.
Lacey's now just doing
Quick
the
little
admin job.
advertisement.
Like, I need those connection cards.
I need those connections. Give me something to do. No, I'm just kidding. And be sure to join us live online or in person on Sundays at 8, 9:45, and 11:30 a.m. with the same service. Again on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Hope to see you all very, very soon. We are glad you are staying connected throughout the week. You are so loved here at OCC.
We love you guys.